So let us start the session by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. All right. So, welcome back after a long, I hope, a pleasantly eventful Easter weekend to everyone. Nice to see all of you again. Please turn to page number 73 on the handout. All right. The discourse on the twin practice. Thus have I heard the four modes of meditation practice. At one time, the Venerable Ananda was staying in Gosita's monastery near Kosambi. There, the Venerable Ananda addressed the monks thus, Auso bhikkhus. Auso, the monks answered the Venerable Ananda in assent. The Venerable Ananda said this, Auso, whichever monk or nuns declares before me that he or she has attained arahanthood, all of them have done so by four paths, right? The four paths. The four paths meaning that which is then discussed within the context of the sutra today, right? Or by one or other amongst them. Amongst them. What are the four? The first one, calm first, then insight. I think we are familiar with, of course, these four parts, right? But I think in dwelling deeper into these meanings, there is much more to be grasped through what the integral meanings and what is really sort of explained by the Buddha. So calm first, then insight. Here also, a monk cultivates calm first, then insight. While he thus cultivates insight preceded by calm, the path arises in him, right? So make a mental note, right? Calm first, then insight, meaning samatha leading on to vipassana, right? Then he pursues, cultivates, and develops that path. And while he does so, the mental factors are abandoned and the latent tendencies are destroyed. Then we have insight first, then calm. Furthermore, also, a monk cultivates insight first, then calm. While he thus cultivates calm preceded by insight, the path arises in him. Then he pursues, cultivates, and develops that path. And while he does so, the mental fetters are abandoned and the latent tendencies destroyed. Then that, make a mental note, is insight going into samatha, or vidarshana, vipassana going into samatha. Then we have both calm and insight together. Furthermore, also, a monk cultivates both calm and insight together, While he thus cultivates calm and insight coupled together, the path arises in him. Then he pursues, cultivates, and develops that path. And while he does so, the mental fetters are abandoned and the latent tendencies destroyed. Right? That mental note we will speak of later. Then the fourth part we have a mind seized by Dhamma restlessness. Furthermore, also, a monk's mind is seized by Dharma restlessness. But there comes a time when his mind is internally steadied, composed, unified, and concentrated. Then the path arises in him. And while he does so, the mental fetters are abandoned and the latent tendencies are destroyed. Also, whichever monk or nun declares before me that he or she has attained arahanthood, they all have done this by these four paths, or by one or other amongst them, right? That is the sutta in its entirety. All right. Thank you very much for joining the class. It was a long. I'm kidding. All right. Now let's get. Okay. now let's get into the core of it, right? Now we know that in the meditative practice, so just for the people who joined a little bit after, what we are speaking about are the four techniques or pathways by which enlightenment can be achieved or attained to, right? The first we have samatha, followed by vipassana. We have then the second, we have vipassana, followed by samatha. And then we have vipassana and samatha together. And then we have a Dhammic contemplation for the dispelling of distractions created by the Dhamma itself, right? So we have those four. Now, out of these four, it should be understood, right? The first three, which is samatha leading to vipassana, vipassana leading to samatha, and vipassana and samatha together, these three parts of practice or parts of practice or ways of practice are intended as a mechanism to balance the or whatever achievement, state, mentality, which is contributing towards the nibbana path. These first three methods are to balance that path, right? Now, I think the word balance is a very important word. I'm not just using it for the sake of not having another word. Balancing is an important word because it brings in the light that these techniques or these mixtures or the way that this mixture is made with vipassana and samatha faculties taken into account is to really produce a state of mind which is robust in its own nature, right? Because the intention behind vipassana is not the understanding of vipassana. The inclinations of samatha is not the understanding or the grasping of samatha. In the Buddha's path of practice, the inclinations for both samatha and vipassana, according or in the light of the Buddha, is the attainment. I want to now take you to the definition of sankhara. Sankhara is defined through the Buddhist text. Sankhara is defined in many ways. One definition of sankhara is that which arises, right? That which arises is classified as a sankhara, right? That which arises. Now, according to that, if a sankhara arises, what is the law? The law is that by the power or by the nature of that same sankhara, it will surely pass away, right? Sankharas that arise will surely pass away. Someone please remind me what the English word is. It mental formations for sankhara? Yes. So sankharas, mental formations that arise must pass away. So then when we talk about nibbana, does that mean that nibbana too is a sankhara? And if so, if it is a sankhara, does that not mean that it passes away? Now, if nibbana essentially arises, it should fit within the definition, which then leads us into thinking that the nibbana or the chitta of nibbana is a sankhara. But in reality, or when one dwells deeper into the text, one understands that the experience of nibbana is not something that arises, right? It is not something that arises. It is a state, right? It is a state which is somewhat allowed, or the foundation for that state is made possible by the inception of the practice of the Eightfold Noble Paths. And of course, we can go into talking about the all the factors of enlightenment, the Satyesha, Bodhisparshika, Dharma. We can talk about all of those aggregates, right? Because all of those aggregates of the factors of the limbs of awakening are that which contributes to the experience of this that does not arise. And because it does not arise, it does not pass away, right? It does not pass away. Because if it does arise, then it will surely have to pass away. So there will be an end to that state that we refer to as nibbana, right? That state that we refer to as nibbana. So if I was you, right? If I was you, okay, if I was you, right? I would then ask, okay, what about the palachitta, right? The palachitta. Isn't the palachitta that which we have been taught to be that attainment of enlightenment, right? Yes and no, right? Yes and no. Yes, how? Remember, the palachitta vibrates how many times? A maximum of twice, right? In that attainment. The maggachitta vibrates once, right? The palachitta vibrates twice, depending upon that moment. Of course, you can get it back again, right? Now, the maggachitta, the magga and the pala, the maggachitta first, the maggachitta vibrates only once. This vibration of the maggachitta is made possible not wholly by just one factor. The factors behind all that which governs the support required for the vibration of the Maggachitta lies in many complex states of mind. But if we are to point a hand and point a finger and say, okay, this is it, we have to point towards the Satyesha Bodhisparshika Dhamma, right? The limbs of awakening, which includes everything from the Noble Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths, all of this. We will go into that later, right? It is when that scenario is made possible that the experience of the Maggachitta and the Palachitta is made. So Nibbana then, it cannot be understood to be within the Maggachitta or the Palachitta. Right? Nibbana should not be understood to be all encompassed within the Magga or the Palachitta. Nibbana is a state of being, right, that does not arise, but what one comes into. through allowance made through those factors of enlightenment and purification that we in the path as followers of the path try to tread on, right? Try to tread on. So it should never be, of course, for the sake of language, we say, okay, maybe attain to Nibbana, maybe Nibbana rise, all of this, but in the actuality, it does not happen that way. It is a state that is made allowable through or made possible through other factors, other varying factors, all contributing towards the purity a being has in life, in this journey of enlightenment, right? So while the first three factors of this sutta are to aid in the balancing aspect of the practice, the last part is to tackle the restlessness of the practice, right? Is to tackle the restlessness of the practice. Now, what is or how does one, now I hope, or maybe not all, but so we will sort of go brush through it lightly, that we remember the aspects of the 40 samatha meditations, right? The 40 samatha meditations. In knowing the 40 samatha meditations, one realizes or one comes to understand that when samatha is practiced, when this aspect of calm, tranquility is practiced, this can be connected in whatever varying degree to the practice of insight, right? Whether it is metta, whether it is dhatu manasikara, which is the mental, the focus upon the elements, or the kasina bhavanas, all of these aspects of calm or samatha meditation can be turned into the practice of vipassana, right? Can be turned into the practice of vipassana. So let us take the first one, right? Let us take the first one. Calm first, then insight, right? Calm first, then insight. So page number 66, please. Page number 66. Calm first. Right. Right. Calm first, then insight. According to the Majjhima commentary, which is the commentary to the Majjhima Nikaya, the one who practices calm first, then insight is called a calm practitioner, samatha jnanika, right? One who is on the vehicle of samatha. Jnanika means or travels through, or the vehicle, yeah? That is one who first cultivates access concentration, upachara samadhi. Now, some have the doubt or some wonder, what is upachara samadhi, upachara parikamma, remember that these states of samadhi, or these different words that we sort of define samadhi which in these experiences, is to clearly denote that we are now near or in the vicinity of the jhana. Usually, when one cultivates access concentration, one will surely achieve or attain to the jhanic state following, right? It is a state of concentration. It is almost as if you have found your way through a complex route of roads to now a road with much clarity where there is nowhere else to go. You can only go forward. That is what upachara samadhi is like, right? You surely know in that state that you are now nearing and now you are in the vicinity of that said jhana, or whatever jhana it is, right? The dhyanas or the formless attainments, and then takes up insight meditation, right, is the concentration gain just before attaining the jhana, right? Just before attaining the jhana. According to the Patipadā Magga, this first mode of meditation involves first establishing the basis for meditative concentration, right? The basis for meditative concentration, and then follows the insight contemplation. What does it mean by saying to establish? Establishing means creating the grounds for the suppressing of the fetters so that they could be further suppressed, the anusayas, and to sort of go on to the destruction of the anusayas. However, in the sutta, when we if you remember, it said preceded by no, it said we'll come to what it said. I missed that part. Okay. Yes. So it says one focuses on an element, and then derived by that path of practice, then one goes on to follow upon. What does that mean? With the three different classifications of what the path is, right? One essentially should know what one is doing. So it is not intended that, for example, you start meditating and today you feel like samatha yanaka vipassana, right? And you do that. And tomorrow you feel like something else and you do that. And the day after you feel like very different, so you do something else. It doesn't work like that. Why it doesn't work like that is, and that is what also clears or becomes clearer, we have much more clarity on by these four sections, is to say, look, any person who has attained to the attainment of Nibbana has done so through one or more or through these parts, or one of these parts of the practice or ways of practice, right? Which means to say that one clearly needs to know the technique which is involved in the process of samatha and vipassana. Right? Usually, in most contexts and with regards to serious practitioners, we often find the twin technique working. It is never it is never bland, just samatha or just vipassana. There's always an inclination, because think about it. A person who is inspired by the fruits of the Buddha, of what the Buddha speaks of, will never be truly inspired by just samatha. He'll be inspired by the fruits that samatha would help him achieve in due course through insight, right? Through insight. So that again comes to the fact of saying, know the method of practice that we are on, right? What is the method that I am following, right? That I am following, whether, and dependent upon that method which is chosen or which is taught, the ways or the mechanisms by which the samatha and the vipassana is managed is different from one another, right? Let's go on to it. According to the Patipadā Magga, the first mode of meditation involves first establishing the basis for meditative concentration, and then follows the insight contemplation. Such a concentration refers to the one-pointedness of mind and absence of distraction. Refers to the one-pointedness of mind and absence of distraction. So when we say now Saturday and Sunday, when you when we discuss the meditation and we come into sort of discussions about how we deal, or so be reminded or reminiscing something or thinking about a certain thought, and really the sort of the advice in almost all instances of that sort comes to be, ignore, do not feed that energy of the mind. Keep to the practice. Keep to the practice. Why is that? To create a mind which is inclined towards concentration and not inclined towards distraction. Not the object of distraction, but the cause of distraction. Right? Because sometimes the mind does not care about what it is distracted by. It just needs something to distract it. It just needs something to be there. It just needs something to make it feel a little bit whole. And that sense of whole that we have attribute, or what have we attribute to the sense of whole, W-H-O-L-E, right? Whole is this sense of having something to think about, having something to do, having something to be sort of busy with, right? That frame of mind we switch, and that is integrally what samatha does, right? What samatha does, right? Moving on. Any questions, please, unmute your mic anytime. Whereas insight here refers to the contemplating the three characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. Of course, we know this, the three characteristics, right? But now, what is the object of the three characteristics, right? Now, we have done calm first. We have done samatha. What is the object of that samatha? I'm sorry, what is now going to be the object of now the coming vipassana, right? What do you think it would be? Any idea? Yes, you can unmute your mics. Yes.
Express your hindrances one by one.
The hindrances one by one. Hindrances, okay. For the hindrances, what is going to be the base to see the hindrances? Or would you need a base, Kingsley? What do you think? Any thoughts?
Oh, I thought the hindrances are, when we recite, we say, Kamachanda Vyapada Tina Midda Viddhata Kukucha Vichikicca.
Yes.
One by one, pressing them.
Yeah.
Then you get Vitakka, Vichara, Priti, Sukha, Ekaggata Sahita, Prathamadhyana.
Your answer is correct, Kingsley. Your answer is correct. However, the backing is wrong, right? But let me explain, right? But thank you for that answer. Mihiri, you unmuted your mic as well, Mihiri.
Well, I just thought it might be that because your mind is in a calm place, you will be able to see the three characteristics of impermanence.
How?
Because you can focus your mind.
Okay.
It would be easier to understand or to experience the five aggregates in detail.
Okay, so similar to Kingsley, yeah?
Mm.
Okay. Let's look at the practicality of that, right? The answer is correct. This is Dhammanupassana, Kingsley. What you said is Dhammanupassana, right? The answer is correct. However, practicality-wise can be a bit difficult, right? Can you tell me why it could be difficult? Just assume. Any thoughts, any idea why you think that application might be difficult? I'll tell you. The application can be difficult. Why? Because the mind is used to now not thinking. The mind is used to being at a state of one-pointedness with samadhi. When the mind is at a state of one-pointedness with samadhi, yes, the perfect instance to now start vipassana, right? However, starting of vipassana at this state can be a little bit difficult, not because of any other reason. The mind loves the stillness of the samadhi. If a person through samatha-jnanika vipassana, or the first, what we are first discussing, calm first, then insight, if the person has got into the higher states of jhana, these highest, remember, you do not know what vipassana is. Why? Because what you've really given your attention to is the development of calm. And when you have committed so much of time into the mastery of calm, the mind, yes, at the back of your mind, you know, of course, you know, that's the best, highest thing. Yes, of course. However, the attraction that one has to the samadhi can be at that moment very high. So what do we do? Right? So what do we do? So Kingsley and Meary suggested Dhammanupassana. Why don't we start with Dhammanupassana? Good technique. How, now I'm going to tell you, how do we bring Dhammanupassana into the practice? You are at the moment a samatha practitioner. As a samatha practitioner, what you know are the jhanas, right? What you know are the jhanas. So when you want to contemplate the aspect of the hindrances, you take yourself down into breaking apart the jhana, going into, wrong use of language, not breaking apart the jhana, but contemplating the integral factors of the jhana. Vitakka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekagata. The instability of vitakka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekagata is your entry into Dhammanupassana. The instability within vitakka, vichara, priti, sukha, ekagata can be followed or seen or tracked to the hindrances. Then you have the hindrances. Now vitakka, vichara, priti, sukha, ekagata disappears. Now you have the hindrances here. And this is your Dhammanupassana element. Did you understand? Right? Again, a jhana, we know, has jhana factors, right? There are 5 jhana factors: initial application, sustained application, zest, sukha, happiness, and ekagata, one-pointedness. You see the jhana, you experience the jhana. When you go deeper into the jhana, you find the jhana factors fueling the jhana. You go deep into the jhana factors, you find the hindrances that hold on to the jhana. Now the focus becomes not the jhana factors, but the hindrances. This hindrance base becomes now, or the vision or the image or the knowledge of the hindrances becomes the base for the Dhammanupassana. That is where now, so now Dhammanupassana is there. The arising and passing away in all of these attributes. How do you now? Now you might, or I will ask, if I was you, what my question would be is, okay, good, okay, we can go back like that, but how do we go back? in all aspects, the jhana to the jhana factors, right? It's going to be with deeper contemplation. Jhana factors to the hindrances, it's going to be arising and passing away, impermanent suffering and non-self. The three characteristics when applied to the jhana factors takes you down to the jhana, the hindrances. Do you understand? Right?
Bhante, question.
Ansari?
Yeah, when you do that, don't you lose the egagata, one-pointedness?
Doesn't matter. Yes, you do.
Doesn't matter. Okay.
Doesn't matter. Remember,
yeah.
ekagata, it is like this, you have this, you've cooked this thing, you've cooked this dish. The dish is gone. You all have eaten it already, but the smell is there in the house. Got it? Almost again, madam, by cooking. The smell is there in a way that you can still taste the cake at home, for example. In the same way, yes, the ekagata is gone, right? But still that sort of spirit of ekagata is in the mind. The power of ekagata is in the mind. That is which allows you to go from the jhana to the jhana factors, from the jhana factors to the hindrances. It's the ekagata. Or else a normal person can't do it without the ekagata. Right? So yes, the ekagata in terms of that is there, but the spirit of ekagata, the power is still there. Yeah. Is that understood? Shriyani, is it clearer now? Yes? Okay, good. Right. So that is then the base which you have to have. Because remember, just being there, yes, I have samadhi now, let's start with vipassana, is not going to help. You need some ground to, like a runner who uses that piece of equipment on the track to give him that push into the track. Similarly, you need some grounding to get started, because look, impermanence, suffering and non-self. Samatha was existed in the world long before the Buddha. But no one found the way towards insight, right? Which should mean that just because you have jhana does not mean that you will know the reality of life. That push, what is the ground, the foundation that you're giving yourself to start off your impermanence into seeing the true causes of the three characteristics? That is what you have to focus on when the shift happens. Do you understand? Right?
Bhante, can I have another word?
Yes.
Like when you do that, so is it possible for you to gradually change to manasikara of the Tilakkhana? Or that means the attention, clear or what's the manasikara in English is wise attention of the yoniso manasikara, wise attention of the Tilakkhana. So you use your and gradually you change over to wise attention of the Trilakkhana within the same energy. Practically, you have gain during or when you achieve the Ekaggata, you have a certain amount of energy. You divert that energy to experience experience Trilakkhana.
Okay. Now, yes, of course. Remember that this energy that we are referring to in this particular case, this energy that we are referring to is the experience of the samadhi itself, right? And that experience itself, having developed that skill, you go to or arrive at that state, that now you are able to see deeper into or go into subtle states of awareness concerning these parts of the mind.
Yeah.
So yes, of course, Damsiri, it is a redirection almost, because what you are doing is you're converting your practice from samatha mainly into vipassana.
Yeah.
So to convert that practice, that is that grounding that we spoke about. All right. Right. And now, so I hope that that is clear, right? Calm first, then insight. Now, for example, let's say anicca, dukkha, anatma, according to the metta practice, right? Now the metta practice can be, now I know that I have guided you all into meditation where I have just sort of mentioned, where we use the data of impermanence of that whole sort of view of, the view of vipassana, meaning the three characteristics of life, in radiating loving kindness to beings, right? Yes, it works. However, when it comes to now, for example, in the class of calm first, then insight, remember that when we cross over, or when we want to cross over, let's now take metta, right? The metta, what is the grounding that we find, or the foundation that we find? No, not foundation. The grounding that we find in the practice of metta that takes us into vipassana. What do you think that grounding is? Hemamali?
Bhante, is it oneness? The oneness.
Oneness of what?
Can you hear me, Bhante?
Yes.
I mean, when you are doing metta, you feel like something like oneness. How do I explain? Everything is like one in one, or something like that. So is that helping?
No. I mean, yes, it could, but I will come to that. Shriyani, you try to unmute the mic. Do you still want to say something?
Impermanence?
No. Impermanence. Impermanence is what we are trying to go into. So the question is, what is it within metta that we find the ground for that will help us? Find ground within the metta that will help us to go into vipassana through metta.
Is it one-pointed? Sorry.
If you see the impermanence, right, that will you see the impermanence of your breath as well to create the metta within yourself. So that, isn't it?
Radiation of love.
Now it became acharwa. We don't know. No. I think this is very important, because we all, we think, because of course, we listen to talks and all of that, but really, when it comes to the path, you have to have an extremely good amount of clarity, and that is very important, right? Yes, Malia?
Bhante, is it present moment awareness?
No.
No.
Then kana shot. Kemal, you're doing kana shot. No. Now, okay.
Can I give a shot?
Sure. Now this is like a carnival, you see. I'm having...
No, Swami Master. I'm trying to say, your mind becomes very calm and tranquil when you are doing metta meditation. So you are spreading universal kindness to all beings.
Yeah.
And from there, it becomes so calm and, concentrated that it helps you to... Is that a kana shot?
That was what do you call that? Overball? It just went over.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm just bullying you guys. But okay.
Why I said impermanence, basically because if you have somebody you don't like, when you start seeing the impermanence of your own self, right, then it's easier to spread metta to a person that you don't like.
Yeah, but remember, Shriyani, at this level, if we are now successfully moving on to Vipassana through Samatha, we will not be having people we don't like at that level, right? Especially not because we have become enlightened, but because the hindrances will be so far suppressed. Right? So yes, hatred will be within us, but the metta, if we are doing the metta practice and we sort of succeed in that practice, we will not have that sort of pattern of mind. But let me break these answers down and sort of come at a proper directive. Now, we had answers which said, one-pointedness, present moment awareness, all true. Yes, of course. But present moment awareness is ekagata. There's nothing more to say about it. So we disregard that, right? Because present moment awareness, ekagata, is a part and parcel of that specific state of mind. So then what do we do? Again, remember, metta practice has jhana, right? So we will talk about jhana as well as without jhana, because not everyone goes into metta jhana, right? So we'll talk about both of them. We'll first take the jhana person. When there is a jhana, means there will still be jhana factors. Got it? Meaning the same technique would apply, go down to the hindrances through the jhana factors, and then use that hindrance or the arising and passing away aspect, impermanent suffering and non-self, of either, you can use either the jhana factors, the hindrances, right? Or the hindrances to now start the contemplation on impermanent suffering and non-self. Again, I'll repeat this again. When you have the jhanas, for a person who has the metta jhanas, what that person can do to go into vipassana is the person can start contemplating or going into seeing the jhana factors present in that jhana mind. He can then use the jhana, the arising and the impermanence, the suffering and non-self aspect, he can apply it to the jhana factors, or he can go deeper and apply it to the hindrances, and then make that a base to go into now the vipassana practice. For the ones who do not, is that understood? Right? That is understood. For those who do not have jhana, what can they do? For those who do not have jhana, but have a certain respectable amount of focus, now not jhana, but still have to have focus, right? Has to be able to perform and practice that specific meditation without any sort of hindrances in that way, to that sort of a level. Then the person bases one's concentration of impermanent suffering and non-self upon the instability of that whole meditative mind, right? Of that whole meditative mind, which is not the whole mind on its own, which is the sense of instability of the concentration. Do you get it? You know, there's a mind that goes up and down, isn't it? There's a mind that goes up and down. There's a mind that might feel like, okay, there's a thinking going on, there's a dialogue going on. Now you're perceiving other things or whatnot. We take that mind into, or as an element of vipassana. As an element of vipassana. Now, let us say, now we have 4 types of vipassana now, right? Satipatthana, Satara Satipatthana, right? So now you might say, or what I would ask if I was you is, okay, got it, but how do you maneuver Kayanupassana, Vedanupassana, Chittanupassana, and Dhammanupassana? Right? Because you should be able to maneuver it into whatever course of practice you want to, isn't it? Right? Then let us take, first of all, Kayanupassana. Right? Now, Kayanupassana might be, for example, let us say a meditator who is used to practicing Metta Bhavana whilst walking. Right? Or in the posture specifically. Right? Through walking meditation or even breathing meditation, right? One has connected the metta into these practices. So then what happens is, whilst the metta is the predominant object at that time of focusing on samatha, we now, through the base of, now this is for a person who does not have the jhana, whilst we contemplate on the fragility of that mind because of impermanent suffering and non-self, we now, through that, we bring the mind into the impermanent suffering non-self of every moment. Let's say walking meditation, then walking meditation every moment. We bring that whole course of energy into something else, almost as if pouring water from one sort of container, pitcher to another. Do you understand? Right? If the focus is on jhana, or if the person has a jhana, what does a person do then? The person then, let's say the metta jhana again, going into Kayanupassana, right? The same, we go down to the metta, the jhana factors or the hindrances, start the contemplation on anicca, dukkha, anatma, on either the jhana factors or the hindrances, and then we start on the impermanent suffering non-self aspect of it, right? Focus upon either the factors or the hindrances. When the focus now starts to mature, right, then that focus can be brought in to any aspect of the Kayanupassana practice by just letting the impermanent suffering and non-self. Now it doesn't have anything to do with metta, because at the end, what happened was it changed. Metta was already changed, remember, right? Metta has already changed by now. So your Satara Satipatthana doesn't have to do anything with metta. It does not have anything to do with metta. Now we can shift it to either the breath, the postures, or whatever it is, walking meditation or anything it is, anything that is, now in the course of seeing the hindrances. With every passing moment, as I take every step, I am aware of the arising and the passing away. Now, still the hindrances are there, right? The hindrances are there, but now the motion of it, or we put it into the frame of what? Seeing it through the scope of Kayanupassana. Of Kayanupassana. In the same manner, we can change it to, well, it is already Dhammanupassana. The shift happened through Dhammanupassana. From Dhammanupassana, we did not stay in Dhammanupassana for long. We took it into, or brought it into Kayanupassana. From the same Dhammanupassana, again through metta, we can bring it into Chittanupassana. Right? Chittanupassana, we focus on now the observing mind, to observe the arising and the passing. We continue along, but now not as a Dhamma, but as a conditioned phenomena of the mind. Did you see the change? Before the shift happened, let me repeat, I feel like this is a bit too much. Before, when we came in from metta into the hindrances, a shift of meditation happened from samatha bhavana to dhammanupassana. Because why? We are looking at a phenomena which is now the hindrances. From the hindrances, when we are looking at a phenomena such as the hindrances in this circumstance and instance, now we want to change it into what? Chittanupassana. How does that change happen? Now, one might think, yes, of course, Chittanupassana, Dhammanupassana, the same. It's really not, right? How is it not? Remember, the focus of Dhammanupassana is the phenomena, not the mind. The focus of Chittanupassana is the mind that observes the phenomena. Do you understand? Now, in a way, having the object in a state of retrospect, where we are now able to observe the mind with the hindrances, of course, arising and passing away, impermanent suffering and non-self in each and every moment, but now with the scope of observing the mind, not just the phenomena. Do you understand? I can explain it again if required.
Bhante, I want to ask a question.
Yes, Hemale, please go ahead.
Bhante, you said to look into the hindrances. I know hindrances are kamacchanda, vyapada, tina, middha, uddhacca, vicikiccha. So, what do you mean by look into hindrances? Is it that it is present or absent or coming and going, or what do you mean by that?
Right. Very good question, Hemale. Thank you for asking the question. Very sorry for that disturbance. Okay, how do we look into, or what do I mean by look into the hindrance? This can be from two perspectives. The perspective of a jhana practitioner and the perspective of a non-jhanic practitioner, right? The jhanic practitioner has clarity. He sees the phenomena as it is. Not, of course, in its true raw form, because still the hindrances and we still have the anusayas and all of that, not in its true raw form. But we clearly see what? We see the effect of the hindrances on the jhana. Through the jhana, we backtrack, isn't it? We backtrack it. We are not jumping from this place to this place. It is quite much like a guitar, right? If you're focusing on just a sound, that's all you hear. Focusing and enjoying the sound is like the jhanic experience. Going to the jhana factors is like diverting your attention now from the sound to where the sound is created, which is your finger on the horsehair strings or whatever it is called, I don't know, right? Going further and going into the hindrances is like going into where that tune is created from, which is that sort of grip that we have here on top of the guitar. Do you get it? Right? In that way, we backtrack it. We follow along that causal effect sort of cycle from the jhanic experience to what creates that experience. But when we go there, we realize, oh, it's fragile. It's not that experience that I thought it was. It's actually fragile. You know what I mean? It's like a child who drinks Milo thinking it's the most healthiest thing in the world. But at the end, if you read the nutrition, it's 60% sugar. You know what I mean? It's something like that, where now the jhana itself doesn't seem so attractive. Why? By the power of vipassana. That backtracking helps you to realize or gain that understanding of what that whole image is, but not just conditioned by experience, right? So in terms of a jhanic practitioner, what we observe as a hindrances is that effect. Do you understand, Himali? Is that effect, how that sort of conditions the other processes to arise. Let's say you are at the third jhana, for example, or even the first or the second, but you are trying to go into a higher jhana, right? You know, because you know the doctrine, you know that higher jhanas are there, the possibility is there, right? And now because you know or have an image of what the second jhana is or the third jhana is, you can assume almost what it might be like, isn't it? You know, because you have a taste of what it already is, right? And now because of that contemplative awareness, you do have, because you remember from the first to the second, you already dropped a jhana factor. You have that sense inside of you. You have that sense inside of you, right? Because you have done it before. Through that, because you have that sense, what happens is now what you see is the raw form of that sort of jhana or the hindrances that affects the jhana. Do you understand? Because you've already gone there. You've already eliminated certain jhana factors. So you know clearly with distinction what happens when you drop the jhana factors. You know what makes the dropping of the jhana factors possible as well. Because remember, meditation, you're not just, it's not something like yannang vale yanna. It's not something like that, isn't it? You have mastery here, right? That mastery is what, Hemamali, is the answer to your question. It is because of that mastery, it is because of that contemplation done after each meditative session that a meditator is aware about what he is truly experiencing at that state. Do you understand? That is for the jhanic practitioner. That is for the jhanic practitioner. So what about for a person who doesn't have a jhana? For a person who doesn't have a jhana, but has a certain idea, not a certain idea, a certain experience of samadhi, no jhana, but a strong experience of samadhi, strong experience of samadhi. That person too, because of the contemplative insight. Now, by contemplative insight, I'm not talking about vipassana. I'm talking about the knowledge of the mind. Do you get it? By contemplative insight, now, for example, what is contemplative insight? Okay, a mechanic, we can say, has insight into how the car works. Let's say an engineer, right? An engineer who builds the engine would have contemplative insight over how the whole mechanism of the car is, right? That's what I mean by contemplative insight, not vipassana. A person with strong mental focus has contemplative insight to how the mind is. That can be made a base to, or the ground for, that person to now excel from samatha-led practices into vipassana-led practices. However, the object of it is never the whole meditative experience. Do you get it? We bring ourselves close as we possibly can to the image or the concept of hindrances. And based on that concept of hindrances, we develop the vipassana. Because, for example, one might practice like this. The hindrances being rampant in my mental stream, I am unable to attain and achieve states of jhana. Hence, there is impermanent suffering and non-self within this sort of practice now this is leading yourself into a real sort of ditch, really, because you're going to give up meditation if you do that. because why? The particular, which is the word we use, particular is particular sanya, foul. Particular is like when you sort of the repulsing of the mental element is going to now spread not only to the hindrance, it is also going to spread into the practice. The practice meaning the jhanic factors, the jhanas, the meditative path and practice, all of it. Because why? There is no focus in it, right? There is no focus in it. So that is why we would focus on or go deeper into from the states of the samadhi or the high states of samadhi that one would experience and focus it to the closest possible amount that we can come close to within the phase of the hindrances. Do you get it?
Sorry, Bhante, can I ask?
Yes, Miri, go ahead.
So can you just give us an example? Can you take one hindrance and just describe from concentration how one would do what you're talking about? I don't quite get it.
Which one do you want?
Say restlessness.
No, do you want the with jhana or without jhana or both?
No, without the jhana, without jhana. Yeah. And just say that somebody's got concentration through metta.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about getting sort of backtracking, as you call it, to a hindrance.
Sure.
So can you just describe exactly what you mean? Thank you.
Example. For example, now the example is metta. Practicing or trying to achieve metta jhana, or practicing samatha-led metta. The person has not achieved jhana, now wants to move on to vipassana. The hindrance that we are now focusing on might be restlessness. But there are two things to sort of focus, because it can be done focusing on one jhanic factor, or it can be done in general, focusing on all the hindrances as a whole as well, right? You don't specifically need to focus on one specific one specific hindrance. You can focus on all the hindrances as a whole to know that they are the hindrances as well, right? But for the sake of example, let us take restlessness. Metta, high concentration. The concentration, first of all, there must be something wrong with the concentration, meaning the concentration is not, it is not leading to jhana. The concentration might be on a rocky road, if we might use that word, right? It might be going up and down. It might be calm. You have good moments with it, but still there is this aspect of instability, even to a minute degree, right? What do we do? Or how do we now, at Miri's request, now with the power of, or looking at restlessness as a hindrance? If we are taking restlessness, it is actually Miri gave me the easiest, right? If we take restlessness, we would go or focus on that instability of that level of focus. that the instability of the samadhi that is present at that moment, right? That becomes the object. And when we go deeper into it, we can now take that as a grounding object to now start impermanence, suffering, non-self upon now that factor of restlessness.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Kama Chanda. Amelia, I'm going to do another one because I like
yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you.
I'm going to do another one, Mary, just for you. Kama Chanda, right? Kama Chanda is, now let's say, okay, metta. You want to, of course, now sort of go into, we know Kama Chanda is the first hindrance, isn't it? Right? Kama Chanda. We have metta, same scenario. How do we see Kama Chanda? Kama Chanda can be seen through the need. Now, in every jhanic or samatha-led experience, there is a want. We focus on that want. This want can be of varying degrees, dependent upon the wisdom aggregate of that practitioner. The want could be from, let's say, practicing metta to go into the higher states of the divine realms, for example. Practicing metta to have a better relationship with your family. Practicing metta to have glowing skin, for example. Practicing metta to achieve and to be in higher states of mind. All of this can be attributed to Kama Chanda. Anything with the base of Vedana. Do you understand? Backtrack, find that point, apply impermanent suffering, non-self onto that singular point, make it the base. Now it turns into Dhammanupassana. Dhammanupassana taken into whatever contemplation you want. Do you get it? Yeah? No?
Not really, Bhante.
No, Miri got it?
Not really. Not the second one.
Okay.
First one I got.
I'm going to explain again. Did you all get the first one?
I think I got the first one. I don't know about the others, but I think I understood the first one a little bit.
Who didn't understand the first one? Anyone? Padma, you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I'm getting a bit confused because I thought when you come to jhanas, you have to suppress the hindrances. So do you think what you're saying is
that is the quality of the jhana. It is suppressed, yes, but it is still there. Okay. And high the jhana, you can still see the hindrances there. Remember, even in the fourth jhana, because if the hindrances are not visible, we will not be able to excel from the jhana. Right? So even, for example, at the level of the fourth jhana, and when we go into Arupa Samapatti and all four levels of Arupa Samapatti are possible because still you are able to see hindrances within the jhana factors. Do you get it? Because or else, what are we going to contemplate impermanent suffering non-self upon? Right? So it is still there. But going back to the examples, I'm going to repeat the first example again.
Please, yeah.
The second example. Kama Chanda, right? The desire for sensual pleasures, right? How do we see it? Same scenario, no jhana, a meditator with high levels of samadhi, going into or trying to convert the practice from samatha into vipassana. Awareness of samadhi, awareness over the mind or the state of samadhi, which is something we do at the end of each meditation, mind you, remember, right? Conscious awareness over the meditation subject. Yes, we have discussed this before. Got it? Conscious awareness. Seeing the hindrances, which, how do you see the hindrances? Because of the instability of the samadhi, right? You have to find some point of the samadhi experience to be able to dig a hole in it, right? Or else you're not going to be able to grab an end. Remember, even when leaving the first jhana and going into the second jhana, you always find a fault with the jhana. If you do not find a fault, there is not going to be any place for you to say, no, I can do better, or I can go higher, right? So that instability is what we exploit, right? Find that place of instability, right? On that line of instability, if we are trying to focus on kama chanda, the desire for sensual pleasure, what we do then is we focus the mind upon the craving attribute which is present in the hindrances. Not that we see all the hindrances, but we see some sort of form which is creating this instability. We give the mind a sense, or focus the mind at that point to kama chanda, which can be any sort of desire to become, need, or want anything, from divine place of existence to stability, wanting to be stable in mind, or any sort of need or want, anything with a vedana to feel better for the jhana. Because in samatha, something that we experience is often wanting to achieve more pleasant jhanas, isn't it? So this is not something which will be foreign to you at that level, at that state, right? Because we are trying to excel in the jhana, so that sense of pleasure will be there. So then we focus upon that pleasure attribute that we try to cling on to. That is kama chanda. That kama chanda, now impermanence, suffering, non-self, applied to the factor of hindrance kama chanda, becoming the base of Dhammanupassana for that moment. And through Dhammanupassana, you can continue along Dhammanupassana or any of the three other or the four satipatthanas as you please. Do you understand? Is that understood?
Bhante, can I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
When you talk about Satipatthana, you can out of four, you can pick and choose according to your achievements and your abilities. Yeah, whether you can bypass Kayanupassana or not. You don't have to spend so much time on Kayanupassana, and if you can move to Vedananupassana and that.
Actually, this is something which has to be taken into account, depending on a case-by-case basis, right? Because if the proper attributes, now, if we are talking specifically with regards to calm first, then insight, right? Samatijnānika vipassana, if so, it's fine. Why? Because we probably developed that earlier through anapana, getting into the meditation at that initial state of focus orientation practice, right? But if we are really going into vipassana for the first time, maybe in the other sense that in the other case that we are going to talk about, then Kayanupassana is a very important attribute of the whole practice. Right? And we do not suggest, in no tradition does it suggest, from Mahasi to Mahasi, to Mahasi, to Goenka, to Pao, to Shremin, to Sunlun. All these techniques uses Anapana as a part of Kayanapasana or Anapana in the light of focus-oriented practices. And that is for really a reason that they do that. It is not advisable for a person who is going into meditation. You know, Goenka, first 3 days is all Anapana Sati. You know, why? Because that develops, that helps in that development of keen intellect into being able to be aware. I'm sorry, what is grammar? Into giving you the ability to now be aware at deeper, more heightened state of awareness upon the object of vipassana. You know, or else it doesn't arise Dhamsiri. It really, you know, it really doesn't, because vipassana does not has to arise if you just, you know, labeling, you know, this is impermanent, suffering, non-serving, but that's not vipassana. We know that already. Right? You will keep on doing that, and that's not going to work out. Vipassana is something, in the Patipadā Magga, it explains vipassana to be something which almost arises as a contemplative practice almost on its own. You know, because of the suppressing of the hindrances to a certain level. You know, that is why, yes, everyone can practice sort of the samatha, but vipassana takes a little bit more of mental stability in that regard. Yeah. All right, Miri, is the second one clear, Miri?
Yes, Bhante, thank you.
Are you sure, Miri?
Yes, sure,
okay.
Thank you.
Good. Now, shall we move on? Oh, there's no time to move on. There's no time to move on. All right, we'll continue next week. Okay. So any other questions before we go? Okay. Yeah, I think the reason that I selected this sutta today, I thought it would be really good to because I think we've sort of gone over through the weeks different questions with regards to, you know, transference on samatha to vipassana and all of this, and we have so much happening with regards to meditation and meditation advice. It is very, very important to be clear, to have clarity on the path, right? And again, as I mentioned earlier, the distinct differentiation which has been laid out by the Buddha in terms of the different parts, which are the 4 parts which are available, gives us a hint to the amount of clarity that one should have before treading or choosing a path that they tread on, right? Because that gives you what to do, you know. And just as there are, with taking the different formulas of meditation, according to the Abhidhamma, there are 1,000 different formulas to meditate, right? 1,000, and this is not just a number. This is just like the 89 chittas, 121 chittas. It is an exact number. We can actually sit down and calculate these 1,000 formulas. You know, there are 1,000 formulas, and all those 1,000 formulas fall under these 4, right? So how you take it, or what specific path that you have chosen for yourself, determines what formulas would apply to you, right? You don't need to know all the formulas, but when you get the gist of it, you can actually calculate the formulas, right? And you will know exactly what comes out of the text, because these changes, the differences between techniques can be it can be really minute. However, the effect can be tremendous, right? So, you know, don't think about it in, of course, you know, dramatic old me, you know, but, you know, take it step by step. But what I would tell you is to analyze what the examples that we sort of spoke about, you know, and sort of think about that and apply that to what is going on with your practice. Yeah, wonderful. So thank you very much. Take care. Goodbye. All the very best. I will see you on Saturday. Right? Take care.
Thank you, Bhante.